The demon lord addresses his 4 heavenly kings, commanding them to take their positions. Omander, the mighty flame knight, Silphid, the fierce storm mage, Genome, the barren earth knight. Lastly, he calls forth the newly chosen, a soul summoned from another world, destined to become the vessel of the 4th heavenly king who governs water. That soul is Uchimura Denosuk, an overseas agent utterly bewildered by the situation. The demon lord reveals himself and informs him that he was the one who summoned him, having observed his efforts from afar. He now extends an offer to him to join his army. Shocked, he realizes this is no ordinary summoning. He, an average salaryman, has been recruited by the demon lord. He introduces himself, explaining how he was just a typical salaryman in Japan, diligently building his career until he was unexpectedly transferred overseas. While trying to establish himself in a foreign country, a sudden accident occurred, a collision with an elderly lady on a scooter. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in this strange place. Confused, he questions where he is and what the current situation entails. The demon lord welcomes him and, much to his astonishment, addresses him by name. When asked how he knows his identity, the demon lord reveals he was the one who summoned him, and that he is now one of the 4 heavenly kings, his title, overseas agent, sounding disturbingly like a job position to the bewildered salaryman. He struggles to understand why he was chosen. The demon lord, reading his thoughts, praises his abilities. He recounts how, after 5 years with his company, he was transferred overseas, where he learned the local language, trained workers, and spearheaded the launch of a new factory. In the demon lord's eyes, such experience makes him an ideal fit for his army. Flustered by the unexpected praise, he hesitates. This is not merely a career change, it feels like plunging into something far more dangerous. As a human, this would not be an upgrade but a significant downgrade. Before he can find the words to refuse, the demon lord makes an enticing offer. In his army, he will be treated as one of the 4 heavenly kings, with a salary and authority equivalent to that of an executive in his world. Stunned by the offer, he listens as the demon lord adds even more benefits, such as subordinates and personal quarters. The perks seem irresistible, and he finds himself unable to object. The demon lord assures him that the decision is his to make, and that he will not be forced into it. He even offers to send Uchimura back if he chooses to refuse. He is taken aback by the demon lord's respect for workers' rights and cannot help but think how extraordinary this is. The demon lord, seeing his hesitation, reaffirms his belief in his worth, urging him to serve under him. Grateful but overwhelmed, his memories of working tirelessly flash before his eyes. He humbly tries to decline, claiming that he is a failure unworthy of the demon lord's attention. The demon lord, however, dismisses such self-deprecating thoughts. He tells him that fools only value what they can see and often fail to recognize the work done behind the scenes, work that the demon lord has indeed seen. It was this effort that made him summon him. The demon lord urges him to understand that neither his former boss nor anyone else decides his worth, only the demon lord does. He tells him that he summoned him because he believes he is necessary. The choice, however, is his: continue to work under those who fail to see his value and be crushed, or join the demon lord's army and be truly recognized. Before he can respond, Omander interrupts, expressing her disbelief that a weak human like him could serve as one of the heavenly kings. She voices her strong opposition, stating he is unworthy of such recognition. Uchimura, inwardly agreeing, admits he isn't fit for the position. The demon lord proposes a test to determine his worth, despite Uchimura's desperate attempts to explain that he possesses no special strength. Ignoring his protests, she eagerly attacks, and Uchimura, paralyzed by fear, wonders if this is the end for him. The demon lord swiftly intervenes, stopping Omander's attack. He chastises her for acting too hastily, pointing out that he has already passed out from the shockwave of her attack, even though it was a light one. She is surprised by his frailty and asks if he has any special abilities or magic. He responds honestly, revealing that he is an ordinary human. Omander finds this unacceptable. She cannot fathom how a human without magic or abilities could serve as a heavenly king. She explains that the army is full of monsters and demi-humans, all vying for top positions. A powerless human, she insists, would be devoured in no time. He adamantly asks if she is sure. She, puzzled by the question, affirms her stance. The demon lord interjects, agreeing that while he lacks physical strength and magical power, it is far too early to deem him useless. He commands him to wake up, and as he regains consciousness, he desperately warns the demon lord that surviving such a blow is impossible. His bones would shatter, and his organs would burst. leaving him a grotesque mess. The demon lord calmly reassures him that physical strength is not what he seeks. Instead, he is interested in his true abilities. He asks him what he did at his previous job, and he explains that during his overseas assignment, he mainly handled negotiations with clients and workers, which proved difficult due to cultural differences. Understanding this, the demon lord devises a suitable test for him. Astonished, he realizes he's now facing an interdimensional job acceptance test. The demon lord assigns Olmander as his escort. He finds himself caught between a hammer and an anvil. An average salaryman, Uchimura Denosuke, finds himself abruptly transferred to another world and headhunted by none other than the demon lord. Now, to prove himself worthy, he must pass a test and earn the acknowledgement of the other heavenly kings. He reflects on how his career has completely derailed since arriving in this strange new world. He believes there is no way a washed-up salaryman who was merely transferred overseas could ever rise to the ranks of one of the four heavenly kings. But he remembers the demon lord's words that he was necessary. This recognition, something he had never received in his world, stirs something inside him. Even if only a little, he wants to live up to the demon lord's expectations. The demon lord informs him of the test. His army is currently negotiating with nearby tribes for unification, including groups like the salamanders and the werewolves. He turns to her, who is overseeing the negotiations, and asks about the minotaurs. The minotaur tribe is composed of massive, horned demi-humans, a formidable race the army is eager to recruit. However, the negotiations have stalled. The test he is tasked with is handling the negotiations with the minotaurs. Stunned by the life-or-death responsibilities suddenly thrust upon him, he balks. The demon lord, however, instructs him to use his skills to earn the trust of the minotaurs and bring them into his army. He is dumbfounded, muttering that this test is even more daunting than a job interview at Google. She interjects, saying that if he succeeds, she will acknowledge him. She warns, though, that many have been severely injured by the minotaurs, trampled underfoot, and advises him to be careful not to become a human carpet. She fixes him with an intense stare, asking why he is walking so slowly. Feeling the weight of her gaze, he asks what he's supposed to do now. She coldly tells him to negotiate and leads him to meet the minotaurs. From what Uchimura has heard, the minotaurs are giant, bull-like monsters, and he is anxious about whether he can possibly negotiate with such creatures. She explains that the demon lord's army is expanding, and they must recruit any force that can strengthen them, no matter how small. However, the minotaurs are violent, and she reiterates her warning for him to avoid getting trampled. He also begins to feel the relentless pressure of her harassment. Finally, they arrive at the room where the minotaur envoy waits. He stares at the massive gate and questions whether it's too large. She, nonchalant, replies that he'll understand once he meets them. She opens the door, and he steels himself. No matter what kind of monster awaits, he resolves to meet the demon lord's expectations and give it his best. Yet the moment he lays eyes on the towering leader of the minotaurs, all his resolve shatters. He immediately fears for his life and wonders if he can even claim workers' compensation for this. She, noticing his terror, sighs and introduces herself to the minotaur leader, Terius, informing him that they've come to negotiate. She assures Uchimura that she will assist him, but only at the start. Relieved, Uchimura watches as she begins to speak, hoping that if the previous negotiator smooths things over, he will have an easier time. But before he can relax, Terius suddenly punches her. Angered, she asks Terius what's wrong with the spacious room they have prepared for him, to which he gruffly responds that he doesn't care and outright refuses the offer. He is left stunned. Her negotiation skills are disastrous. She leaves the rest to him, patting him on the shoulder, and he dreadfully realizes that her negotiation skills are practically non-existent. Now it's up to him to try reasoning with the massive creature. Terius immediately insults him, calling him a dickhead. He stands frozen, stunned by the unexpected insult. She, livid, accuses Terius of mocking them, but the minotaur leader appears reluctant to continue. He realizes something while they are abruptly thrown out. She, still fuming, taunts him, asking if he now understands how impossible this negotiation is. She was certain it would be beyond him. He wonders if what just transpired could even be called a negotiation and not a scorched earth strategy. Frustrated, she declares the whole thing a waste of time and announces she's leaving since the task is impossible. As she turns to go, he notices something. Curious, he asks her about the pile of objects Terius brought. She dismissively explains that it's garbage. Terius insisted on bringing it into the castle, but her subordinates collected it when he entered the room. She scoffs, wondering what Terius was thinking about bringing trash into the castle. A realization strikes him, and he tells her he's going to try talking to Terius again. Confused, she reminds him that the negotiations have already failed and that going alone will be pointless. Watching him dig through the discarded items, she asks why he's bothering with garbage. He recalls his overseas assignments back in his world. Even though he had learned the language, he had often failed to grasp the culture, leading to misunderstandings and strained relationships. He remembers that what's needed in negotiations isn't just technique, but patience and perseverance, qualities that remain the same even in another world. He turns to her and tells her that she is giving up far too quickly, insisting that nothing has truly started yet. Confused, she listens as he explains that despite Terius's massive size, he is still a person. Failed negotiations are often the result of deep misunderstandings. To resolve this, one must take the time to truly understand the other party and patiently build trust. He, now determined, reassures her that he will see this negotiation through to the end. She is taken aback. Gone is the timid man who had been quaking in fear moments ago. Now he stands resolute. She recalls what the demon lord said about him and asks impatiently what he plans to do. She glances at the trash he's collected and asks what he intends to do with it. He explains that the key to building trust lies in the conversation they had earlier, and a crucial clue emerged from it. She asks him what the clue could possibly be. He replies that dickhead is the clue. Dumbfounded, she demands why he is so casually repeating a crude insult. He closes the door, asking her to leave as he will handle the case from here on, but she is unsatisfied. She comes the next morning and opens it, asking Terius if he is okay. But as she opens the door, she is shocked to see the gigantic mountain of garbage in the big room. Uchimura says good morning to her from behind, and she becomes angry at him, shouting and asking him how he dares to tarnish the Demon King's sacred holy castle. She then asks him about Sir Terius as she can't see him around. He replies to her that it's because, at the moment, he is meeting with the Demon King and finalizing the details of the assimilation agreement. She becomes shocked to hear it, wondering how it can be possible. He tells her that in yesterday's negotiations, it was decided that the minotaurs would join the Demon King's army. She shouts at him, asking what he is saying and how they could decide on it in just one night. He replies that last night he was able to gain Terius' gratitude, so right now he must be meeting with the Demon King, and they will be preparing the agreement's documentation. She freaks out, unable to believe it, as that caused her many problems. So how was that possible? She demands to know what he did with him. He then explains that there is a phrase in his world, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The reason the negotiations have been very challenging until now is because they didn't know him at all. First of all, he was willing to negotiate from the beginning, as minotaurs are a tribe that lives in a remote area heading south. To be subordinate to the Demon King's army, they were offered food and access to technology. However, once he arrived at the Demon King's castle, his attitude took a dramatic turn. She asks him how it could happen, as they even prepared such a gigantic room for him. He bows down, telling her that it's because of the hay, as minotaurs spread this kind of hay where they sleep. Since Terius didn't want to cause any trouble for the Demon King's army, he decided to bring it with him, but the Demon King's army confiscated it. She becomes shocked, stating that she thought it was just trash, but in reality it was his bed. He then touches the floor, stating that this floor is very cold, and with how heavy Terius is, his body may suffer some kind of injury. That is why it seems that during his stay he has been unable to rest at all. Suddenly, asking him to stop, she points towards the bed, as they even prepared a bed for him. He could have used it. He tells her that with the great weight he possesses, he may have destroyed it, so he was being thoughtful. She tells him that he should have told them in the first place that he was going to use the hay as his bed, to which Uchimura tells her that it's not that he didn't want to tell them, he just couldn't say it. But it was all thanks to the clue he gave them. She shouts at him, asking why he is repeating that word, and what it has to do with anything. He explains that since he came into this world, the language he speaks is automatically translated, and it seems that the language of the local dialects is also translated. That word means small in their language, so he was worried about destroying the bed and wished he had something bigger. However, in their dialect, it is very difficult to convey such intentions, so he couldn't communicate his request well. Uchimura figured Terius was going through a lot of anxiety, so if they also spoke in their dialect, they could come to a mutual understanding, and that's how the talks went so easily. She looks sad, asking if he means it's the most common thing to understand. Suddenly, the Demon King appears from behind, telling her that it's the most common thing, and that's the talent Uchimura possesses. Olmander becomes shocked to see him, and the Demon King tells them further that a little while ago, all the paperwork for the agreement was signed, and from now on, the Minotaurs will be part of the Demon King's army. Uchimura becomes happy, and the Demon King tells him that he has done a good job and is accepted as the new Heavenly King. The Demon King asks Olmander that as he has passed the test, she shouldn't doubt his abilities anymore. She touches her heart and nods. The Demon King asks Uchimura to show him his right arm. He raises it, and the Demon King takes something out, stating that it proves he is a Heavenly King, so he should receive it with respect, throwing it toward his arm. Uchimura looks at it and thanks the Demon King, who tells him he has high expectations for him. Olmander asks him to raise his arm too, and he asks her why. She walks toward him and activates her bracelet with his. She then explains that in her tribe, this is a symbol that he is now her colleague, so he should remember it well. She then turns her face, asking him not to misunderstand her, as she's only doing this in recognition of him passing the test. The Demon King thinks the negotiations were originally a matter to be resolved by Olmander, but they didn't matter anymore. Helping each other will complement and strengthen the organization, so Uchimura will be the light whose glow will spread to other people, making the whole army shine too. He looks forward to seeing how his progress will be. Olmander then asks Uchimura if he can help her with the other negotiations, and he tells her that of course he will. Negotiations with large companies are always a daunting task. They often have a high threshold, and their demands can be unreasonable, making it hard for any negotiation progress. This brings forth significant challenges that Uchimura never imagined he would face, especially in another world. 3 hours earlier, the Demon King summoned Uchimura and Olmander, mentioning the ogre tribe and stressing that the Demon King's army must incorporate the emerging nations in the surrounding areas. One such nation that wields a significant amount of influence is the ogre tribe. It would be a great reassurance if they could approach the ogres and secure their military support. However, if the ogres were to become their enemies, it would pose a serious problem. The negotiations have been tough due to the ogre tribe's exceptional strength and skills, and until now they lacked the right person to handle them. But with the successful conclusion of the Minotaur negotiations, the Demon King now felt confident. He believed that if Uchimura is in charge, the negotiations with the ogre tribe would also be successful. He entrusted Uchimura with the crucial role of negotiating with the great ogre society. Uchimura, brimming with confidence, shouted to the Demon King, assuring him to leave everything in his hands, as he was certain of success. However, upon reaching the ogre tribe, Uchimura was shocked by the critical situation they found themselves in. The atmosphere was charged with a violent, killer impulse that made him uneasy. Olmander introduced them to the monsters, expressing their desire to speak with the patriarch. They were granted entry, but as Uchimura observed the tribe, Olmander explained the peculiar nature of the ogre tribe. The ogres possessed a vast territory, and their soldiers were so skilled that they could rival the Demon King's army. Uchimura understands that these negotiations were not just between two parties, but rather between two large rival companies. Olmander explains that the primary obstacle is their leader, Ogre, the formidable head of the ogre tribe. As Uchimura and Olmander approach him, Ogre quickly asserts his dominance, demanding absolute silence and forbidding them to speak unless permitted. His authority is clear, and even Olmander, typically strong-willed, steps back in obedience. Uchimura quickly realizes that Ogre's power is not to be underestimated. Ogre, with a confident smile, reveals he knows their purpose. They wish to join his ranks as one of his generals. This shocks Olmander, who hadn't expected such straightforwardness. Ogre, however, is willing to make an exception, but only on one condition. They must bring him the head of the Demon King. Olmander is visibly shaken, immediately questioning Ogre's sanity. Ogre remains steadfast, indifferent to her protests, and insists on an answer. Uchimura, understanding that this is not a decision to make hastily, responds diplomatically, saying they will return to the Demon King's army to think carefully about the proposition. With a measured expression of gratitude for Ogre's time, he takes Olmander by the hand, leading her away without further confrontation. Once outside, Olmander's frustration boils over, unable to believe Ogre's demand for the Demon King's head. She vents her disbelief, but Uchimura urges her to stay calm, explaining that Ogre's goal was to provoke her into emotional outbursts, ensuring the negotiation's failure. He explains that Ogre has no intention of negotiating. His primary goal is to avoid unnecessary conflict by forcing them into a reaction that could lead to blame being placed on the negotiators. Olmander, though angry, realizes Uchimura is right. She questions why Uchimura isn't more upset by the insult to their king. Uchimura admits that Ogre's actions were shameful, but reacting in anger would have been detrimental to their mission and the Demon King's position. Olmander, realizing the wisdom in Uchimura's approach, apologizes, knowing her outburst could have worsened the situation. As they reflect on what to do next, a girl suddenly approaches them, apologizing for her sudden appearance. Introducing herself as Olulu, Ogre's daughter, she asks if they are the envoys from the Demon King's army. Suspicious, Olmander reacts with hostility, but Uchimura intervenes, asking the girl what she wants. Olulu reveals she wants her father, Ogre, removed from power. Uchimura is shocked by this revelation and asks why. Olulu explains that while the ogre tribe holds great influence, its financial situation is dire, and they are struggling to even feed their people. This internal crisis within the ogre tribe adds another layer of complexity to their negotiations, making it clear that the tribe's problems run deeper than they initially realize. As expected, Uchimura suspected something was wrong when Olmander asked if he knew the situation. He explained that the soldiers' equipment was badly damaged, the mansion was dark and lifeless, and it was a scenario he had seen many times when a large company was in decline. In such cases, the top-down command structure simplifies, and as the collapse begins, things deteriorate even faster. Trying to fix it at that stage is often futile. He asked if this wasn't exactly what had happened here. Olulu admitted he was right. To restore the collapsing ogre tribe, they had no choice but to join the Demon King's army. But the leader, Ogre, refused to listen to reason. She reveals that the leader, her father, is sick, and his current stance is just a facade. He no longer had the strength of his golden years. Yet if her father were to die unexpectedly, chaos would reign within the ogre tribe, so she felt compelled to act before that happened. Uchimura, understanding her point, suddenly called her a fool, which shocked her. He further explained that members of an organization shouldn't go around disclosing internal problems so easily. Moreover, it was unacceptable to speak about the health of those at the top. As the patriarch's daughter, she needed to be more discreet. He added that her main flaw was simply that she was too kind-hearted. She blushed at his remark, while Olmander grew angry on her behalf. Despite the tension, the girl admitted that she could tell who to trust simply by looking at people. That's why she had chosen to talk to Uchimura. Addressing him by his full name, she moves closer and, with a pleading look in her eyes, asks him if he will marry her and become the next king of the ogre tribe. Uchimura is utterly shocked, staring into her eyes as he processed the unexpected proposal. His second mission is a merger with the ogre tribe. He arrives, fired up, but quickly finds himself intimidated by their chief, who is far too scary. To make matters worse, the chief's daughter complicates the situation further. He confirms, saying he's looking forward to working with her. She happily accepts his offer. As he extends his hand to Olmander, expressing his hopes for working well together, she refuses with a scowl, reminding him she's not there to be his buddy. He is shocked by her response. She tells him that to save the tribe, they need a new way of thinking, and asks if he will become the new chief. He is stunned, immediately telling her to stop because everything is happening too fast. He asks if she shouldn't select someone from the tribe instead. She explains that everyone in the tribe is stuck in her father's way of thinking, and if his dictatorship ends, the tribe's people will change. He acknowledges her intentions, but warns that what she's attempting isn't a revolution, it's recklessness. She seems confused, so he elaborates that while removing a tyrannical leader might seem like the solution, organizations aren't that simple. It's common to find that those who were thought to be villains were the ones holding things together. People who feel cornered often look for the easiest escape, leading them to extreme actions. She asks what she is supposed to do, given that no one else feels the urgency, and her father refuses to come to the negotiation table. He tells her there is a way, but she will need determination. He emphasizes that she can't just stand as a spectator anymore and asks if she's ready to become an active participant. She understands and asks him to explain the plan. A week later, he asks the ogre chief why he called him there. The chief accuses him of playing dumb, questioning why the other tribes have joined the demon lord's army before the ogres. She jumps in, asking if the plan is to invite other tribes into the army. He confirms it, explaining that he's heard some tribes are struggling. She agrees, adding that the neighboring tribes are also facing food shortages, though in the past, the ogre tribe had helped them. Now they can't. He suggests they should merge with the other tribes, planning to encircle the ogre clan. Olmander hadn't expected him to summon them for such action. Uchimura reveals that this strategy had landed him deals with big companies back in his world. If the surrounding tribes join the army, the ogre chief will panic. The first part of the plan is a success. He further explains that if the struggling tribes join the army, their livelihood will be secured. The ogre chief, however, yells that he never agreed to it, insisting the region is under the control of his tribe, and he won't allow them to act on their own. Uchimura is pleased because negotiations driven by emotion rather than reason always favor the calm party. He apologizes to the chief, clarifying that the negotiations were led by the ogre tribe, not the others. The chief accuses him of lying, stating that he never agreed to such talks. At this moment, he invites someone into the room. The chief is stunned as his daughter has negotiated with the surrounding tribes to merge with the demon lord's army. He is shocked that she wields such power. She attempts to convince her father, but he refuses to listen. She explains that times have changed and even the undefeated ogre chief is aging and suffering from illness. It's time, she says, to join hands with the neighboring tribes. The chief hesitates, so Uchimura suggests creating an alliance, a partnership of equals. He explains that when cornering a rat, one shouldn't kill it immediately. Giving it an escape route often ensures it takes the path provided. The chief reluctantly says he'll consider it, promising to think about it and give an answer later. Uchimura thanks him. Quietly amazed that his daughter took such initiative in negotiations, he thinks times truly have changed. Days later, Olmander informs him that the ogre chief has agreed to merge. She notices him staring at some papers and asks what's wrong. He explains that the demon lord has asked him to select his subordinates, but he doesn't know whom to choose. She advises him to trust his instincts and pick people he likes. When he looks at her, she asks what's on his mind. He replies that it would have been nice if she were his partner. Her face turns red. She stammers, saying there's no way they could be partners, they've only just met, and it's too soon. He insists that he feels more comfortable with someone he's familiar with. Blushing even more, she relents, saying that if he insists, she can be his partner. There's a knock on the door, and when he opens it, it's the ogre chief's daughter. She explains that since their tribe merged, she's been sent as a representative. He understands, and she thanks him for his help, explaining that because of him, the ogre tribe is changing. He brushes off the thanks, saying he was just doing his job. She insists that he's her benefactor and offers to do anything in return. Olmander tells her to clean the room, and Olulu responds that she's learned many household chores and can manage them. Curious, he asks her why she chose to trust him, someone whose background she didn't know. She explains that it was a gut feeling. He then asks if she will become his subordinate, and she hesitantly asks if that's truly okay.